This program is brought to you by the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing with the community the many benefits of a vegetarian diet. Free monthly meetings include vegetarian experts found locally and on the mainland, quick and easy cooking demonstrations, and healthful and delicious food samples. Members enjoy an informative quarterly newsletter, social activities, and discounts at many vegetarian-friendly restaurants and health food stores. For an application, call 944-8344. That's 944-8344. Or visit our website at www.vsh.org. vsh.org.
Aloha, and welcome to the monthly public presentation of the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii. Since 1990, the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii has been following our mission of promoting human health, animal rights, and protection of the environment by means of vegetarian education as we've grown to become one of the largest all-volunteer nonprofit vegetarian societies in the nation. It is now time for our special guest. We're delighted to have with us tonight Patti Breitman. Patti Breitman is the founder and director of the Marin Vegetarian Education Group and a co-founder of Dharma Voices for Animals. She is on the advisory council of the Animals and Society Institute, an effective not-for-profit organization that brings science and knowledge together with ethics and compassion. Patti has been a vegan since 1986 and has been teaching cooking classes for 15 years. Her newest book, written with Carol J. Adams and Virginia Messina, RD, MPH, is Never Too Late to Go Vegan, the Over 50 Guide to Adopting and Thriving on a Plant-Based Diet. She's also the co-author of How to Say No Without Feeling Guilty and of How to Eat Like a Vegetarian, even if you never want to be one. She and her husband Stan live in Marin County in California, and she has 3 sons and 2 granddaughters that she got the easy way by marrying Stan 26 years ago. Now, Patti Breitman's presentation tonight is entitled Never Too Late to Go Vegan, Why and How to Make the Switch for a Better Life. Please join me in welcoming Patti Breitman.
Thank you, Lorraine. Oh, how beautiful.
Well done.
Thank you. That's gorgeous. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, and thanks to all of you, mahalo, for coming out tonight. Whew. This is beautiful, isn't it? Okay. So I am not a registered dietitian. I'm not a doctor. I am not a cook professionally. I'm not a chef. Basically, I have been a vegan for 25 years, and I love it. And I am a partner, a professional partner, with Carol J. Adams, who wrote a very famous book many years ago called The Sexual Politics of Meat. And since then, she's written more than 20 other books. And when I was a literary agent, I represented her, and we became friends. So we wrote our first book together, was called How to Eat Like a Vegetarian, Even If You Never Want to Be One, because a lot of people say, well, I could eat that way if somebody would cook for me, or I would eat that way once in a while, but I can't see doing it forever. People don't want to label themselves anything. People don't want to say, I'm a this, I'm a that. We already have enough labels. So we wrote that book for people who don't want to identify as vegetarians, but want to eat that way more and more. Speaking of which, I'd love to know how many people in the room are not yet vegetarians. Please raise your hand. Wonderful. And how many people in the room were not born and raised vegetarian? Please raise your hand. So everybody look around. Very few of us were born and raised vegetarian. Are there any vegans in the room? Please raise your hand. Are there any people moving toward veganism and toying with it and playing with it? Wonderful, thank you. A lot of people in every category, and I'm thrilled that each of you is here. Okay, so I said who I am, and I want to talk about why I wrote this book, Never Too Late to Go Vegan. A lot of people write off people over 50 as don't even bother trying to change their minds. They're too old, they're too stuck in their ways. People over 50 aren't going to change. They're used to their recipes, they're used to their medicine, they don't want to change, leave them alone. There's a marvelous organization called Vegan Outreach that targets college campuses and tries to tell people on college campuses all the fabulous reasons why we should be going vegan. And they think if you convert someone who's young, you'll save more animals over that person's lifetime than if you convert someone over 50. So they put all their energy into teaching about veganism to young people because they figure there's a lifetime ahead of them of saving animals' lives. Well, Carol and I resented that. It's like, you can't write us off. We're both well over 50. We don't like that you're telling us it's too, you're not going to bother with us because we're not going to save as many animals as the younger people. So we decided we needed a book for people over 50. Now, we were already on a path to writing a book called What Do Vegans Eat? And we had sent surveys out to hundreds of people who promised to write down what they had for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks for a week, so we could compile what's a typical meal for people who are vegan. Anyway, we got those results back, and we were kind of shocked by the results. A lot of people over 50 who answered what they eat normally. We also asked questions about social things. How do your friends react when you went vegan? How does your family react to you going vegan? And people over 50 had a surprising number of challenges. We were surprised. A lot of people who went vegan after they were 50 said that their friends stopped inviting them out. There were couples that went out every week for years to a movie and dinner, or they had a card game. And their friends didn't know what to make for them or didn't know how to go to a restaurant with them and were embarrassed when they asked questions to the waiter. So a lot of people got uninvited to social events. Well, living long has a lot to do with your social life, not just what you eat. And people who don't have something to look forward to once a month or once a week, people who aren't out socializing, don't live as long as people who do have something to look forward to, which is another great reason to join this Vegetarian Society, because you have regular meetings to go to with nice people. But we found out that it's an issue we had to address if we were talking about going vegan over 50. And in the book, we teach you ways to say to your friends, hey, I can take care of myself. Don't worry about me. Please keep inviting me. Or I've made this change and it has nothing to do with you and I don't want you to feel inconvenienced. I know how to bring something to a dinner you're preparing and I'll bring my own vegan food. Please don't uninvite me. So we tell people to meet that issue right up front. So we wrote this book because we wanted to address those issues so that people didn't think, I'm too old, I'm too set in my ways, it's not going to work for me. It actually works dramatically quickly when you give up the animal products and you add so many nutrient-rich plant kingdom products. The changes physiologically happen fairly fast. If you get a blood test tomorrow and spend about 1 month being a vegan, and get a blood test again, you'll be amazed. Most new vegans, not everybody, but most new vegans see an improvement in their blood pressure. Most new vegans see an improvement in their cholesterol levels. Most new vegans lose some weight. Not everybody, but most. And so we wrote this book because people over 50 need to lower their cholesterol levels. Most people over 50 need to lose a little bit of weight. Most people over 50 need to lower their blood pressure. And that was sort of our excuse intellectually for writing the book. But the real reason we wrote the book was we love animals, we love our planet, and we really don't want to spend our last years on the planet in nursing homes and hospitals if we don't have to. So the book is for people of every age, but especially people over 50 are going to learn a lot from it. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody here out there?
Anybody who can't hear me, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Old joke. So, I was an editor in New York City, and I was editing books about disease, and I was editing humor books. Mad Magazine had an anthology of its issues, a little paperback that came out once a month, and I was the editor, figuring out which magazines went in which issues. So I worked with all the people at Mad Magazine, and I also edited health and disease books. And it was a nice balance, because the disease books were very depressing, and the health books and the comic books, the humor books, really perked me up. I edited the New York City Cab Driver's Joke Book, which is where I get some of these terrible jokes. But anyway, I was editing a book called Fit for Life, which was a huge bestseller back in 1984 or 1985, and I was the editor. And I remember, I'll never forget what Harvey Diamond wrote in that book. He said, humans are not natural carnivores. If we were, we would salivate when a rabbit ran by. Or when we saw a cow, when we saw the natural prey, we would salivate. We don't salivate. And his most famous line was, if you put a baby in a crib with an apple and a rabbit, if that baby eats the rabbit and plays with the apple, I'll buy you a new car. He never had to buy anyone a new car because nobody naturally would do that. Children naturally love animals. Humans naturally love animals. We're taught from our culture, from our parents, and every animal on the planet is taught from its parents what food is and what's appropriate food and how to get that food. So we're not different from any other animal in that we learn from our parents what's appropriate food. But science now has shown us that what's appropriate and what's best for us isn't necessarily the way our parents and grandparents have always eaten. So there are some social issues when you change your diet. Suddenly your family feels left out. Like what, it wasn't good enough for you the way I cooked, if it's your mother, or the kids, what do you mean you're not making Thanksgiving turkey? What do you mean you're not making the old familiar recipes when I come home? So there are issues, and we deal with them in the book, and we talk about how to allay everybody's fears when you make a change in your diet at this age. I want to point out that there is not just one way to go vegan. There are lots of ways to go vegan. There's a New York Times columnist named Mark Bittman who wrote a book called VB6, and the VB stands for Vegan Before 6. So he has chosen to be a vegan for breakfast and a vegan for lunch, and then for dinner he eats anything he wants. And he dropped a lot of weight and lowered his cholesterol and feels much better being a vegan before 6. He changed 2/3 of the way, and that's marvelous. There's also a program out of the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University called Meatless Mondays. In that program, municipalities and school districts and other organizations have pledged that every Monday there will be no meat on the menu. So the cafeteria will be meatless on Mondays. Everyone taking that course has 1/7 as much animal products in their system as somebody who isn't doing a meatless Monday. Well, in our book, we recommend either of those as a way to get your feet in, to just start it. We recommend picking either one meal a day or one day a week, or how about you're a vegan on weekends? You try it on weekends. When you're not going to work, you can make your own food at home. You can try being a vegan. Or, even better, Monday through Friday be a vegan. And on weekends, you can go back to your old bad habits if you're still nervous about it. But there are a lot of ways to get your feet wet. You don't have to jump in all at once and be a vegan if you're scared of it. Now, this kind of group helps you not be scared of it. You see normal, healthy people who have been vegan for many years, and you know that it's doable, but it's still hard to make that change. There are a lot of other ways to do it. Some people go vegan only when they eat at home, and when they eat out, they do whatever they want. Other people go vegan only when they eat out so they can try vegan food at restaurants because they're afraid to make it themselves. So they'll go to all the different vegan restaurants in town and try different things. And then they get tired of spending that kind of money and realize they can make it themselves at home. There are lots of different ways to go vegan. And once you are a vegan, don't let anyone tell you that you're doing it wrong. Once you are a vegan, you're doing it right. You can tweak it for health reasons. You can tweak it for any reason you like. But there's no wrong way to go vegan if you're looking at the big picture. Now, there's a very popular diet called the zone diet, and it's all about eating for the zone. It's a very selfish diet because it's all about you. It's all about whether you feel well and whether you're losing weight and whether you're thriving. Veganism is the opposite. It's not a selfish diet, it's an altruistic diet. Because even though we get well on being on a vegan diet, even though we feel better, even though we can be strong, we can be athletic, on a vegan diet, we can be everything we want to be. However, it's not about us. That's what I love about being a vegan. It's really not about me. Even though I benefit from it, for me, being a vegan is about the planet. It's about our fellow earthlings, the other beings on the planet. We share this planet with so many creatures, many of whom are going extinct now. But the fish and the cows and the turkeys and the pigs, they share this planet with us, and when we take their lives, it's a total injustice for them, and it's a life and death choice for them. We may get better on a vegan diet, we might feel better, and we might thrive, and I'm pretty sure we do. But it's not about us. We're helping the other beings of the earth live their lives. Additionally, the planet itself is in dire straits. The planet itself is just hurting, not just the pesticides and not just the herbicides and not just the way we're just fracking and attacking. It's a nice phrase, fracking and attacking. That's what we're doing to our planet. But on top of that, raising animals for food is devastating the rainforests. We're growing more food for animals than for people, and in order to keep that demand for meat satisfied, we're cutting down the rainforest so we can grow food to feed the cows. It's very wasteful. The rainforests are the lungs of the planet. We need them to purify the air. So we're polluting the air by raising animals for food, And at the same time, we're getting rid of the trees that could have been helping keep the air clean. So on both ends, we're just doing an injustice to the planet when we're not vegan. I want to talk about a statistic that blew me away when I was researching this book. It totally blew me away. I don't know if anyone can guess, just in your head, take a guess of how many pounds of manure a dairy cow produces a day, a lactating cow. Just get an idea in your head of how big a cow is, how much poop she creates, and while she's being a dairy cow, guess how much poop she creates in one day. Just keep that number in your mind. According to the USDA, every dairy cow, and this is not just on factory farms, this is every dairy cow, even on so-called humane farms, every dairy cow produces 150, on average, 150 pounds of manure a day. It's disgusting. The planet can't handle that. Also, Poultry Science Journal, the Journal of Poultry Science, said that if chickens grow at the rate, if human grew the way chickens grew at the same rate, by the age of 2 months, a human would weigh 660 pounds. Chickens are bred to grow so unnaturally fast that they can't walk and their legs get deformed and they get all kinds of horrible diseases. Back to poop. I read the wrong article because I want to stay on poop. So 150 pounds of manure a day per dairy cow. A farm with 10,000 hogs, does not have a waste treatment center. There's no waste treatment the way a city might have. Okay, the hogs in a single county in North Carolina, produce half as much waste as all of the people in New York City. So New York City has 8 million people. As much poop as 4 million people. 4 million people is produced in one county in North Carolina where they raise pigs for food. Now the problem with raising animals for food, and I'll talk about cows here, is that cows produce methane. When they poop, when they fart, when they belch, methane is put in the air. And it turns out that methane as a gas is a bigger global warming issue than scientists have ever thought. In 2008, the United States poured 49 million tons of methane into the air. The total impact of US methane on the world's energy is different from what we thought, and methane is much worse than CO2. The Dr. Lau is nodding. Methane is a real problem with global climate change. It's worse than CO2, and it's much worse than we thought, and much of it comes from animal agriculture. The vast majority of it comes from animal agriculture. So, if you love the planet, going vegan is a wonderful gift to give back to the planet that sustains us and nurtures us. There's a marvelous documentary film called Earthlings, E-A-R-T-H-L-I-N-G-S, Earthlings. We're Earthlings, and the other animals with whom we share the planet are Earthlings. If you go to earthlings.com on the computer and watch, it's a hard documentary to watch because it shows what we're doing to our fellow Earthlings, but it's a marvelous, powerful movie to make you feel connected to this planet that gives us our life. I want to read a short piece from this book. It was fun to write because we interviewed lots and lots of vegans over 50, and we tell their stories throughout the book. And when we turned it into the publisher, he said, those stories are fantastic, but there isn't enough about you. So Carol and I didn't mention my third co-author. Carol and I are the two co-authors with Virginia Messina. She has a master's in public health and a PhD. And she was our scientific reference. She basically made every single thing we did in this book had to be scientifically accurate. And I was so angry at her because I wrote a chapter on the environment. And when she read it, she said, it's very good, but all of your sources aren't primary sources. I read books, and I took notes from the books I read. She said, you can't use books. You have to go to the original source of these studies. So 2 days before our final deadline, I had to rewrite the whole chapter going to the original source and get the USDA reports and the poultry industry reports and the cow industry report. I had to go to the dairy industry reports themselves and not rely on books that had used those reports. So everything in here is scientifically accurate. And I thank her for that now, but boy, was I angry. There wasn't enough of us in the book. It's nice to hear stories from all these people all over the country who were going vegan after 50 or who were vegan over 50, and they said, how about you? So throughout the book, we created little sections on, there's a section for Carol, for me, and for Ginny throughout the book on things like, so what's a typical breakfast like for you? Or what's in your refrigerator? Or what's in your closet? And the reason I mention closet is because being a vegan isn't just about food. Vegan is a love story between us and the planet and the other animals we share the planet with. So we don't want to wear feathers, we don't want to wear leather, we don't want to wear wool, we don't want to wear silk. So our closets are different from many other people's closets. So there's a section on what's in our closet, there's a section on why we became vegan, there's a section on what we love about being vegan. So you can read about us throughout the book. But there's one thing I want to read that I love, that's Carol's story about why and how we talk about the lives of animals. My answer is, I wear t-shirts all the time that say something like Veg Fest or the name of a vegetarian society, and other vegetarians or people who are interested will come up and start conversations. It's a very easy way to be an activist. But anyway, I'm going to read Carol's piece. You can read mine when you look at the book, but I'm going to read what Carol said about why and how we talk about the lives of animals. I thought this was fascinating. She said, while traveling on an airplane once, I was seated next to a child psychologist. We had already engaged in a long, relaxed conversation about his profession and his work with troubled, gifted children. When my vegan meal was delivered to my seat, this prompted a discussion. He admitted knowing that meat was unethical, but still persisting in his ways. Because we had already explored many topics, I felt comfortable turning to him and asking what this conflict felt like to him. What happens when you sit down to eat meat? I asked. I have a hole in my conscience, he said. I thought about that, a compelling and honest answer, but I was troubled. But our entire culture says it's okay, I responded. He replied, well, we've got a collective hole in our conscience. Anyway, Carol said it may help to consider our discussion of farmed animals as our attempt to repair the hole in our conscience. I want to talk about a monk, a Buddhist monk. I helped found an organization called Dharma Voices for Animals because a lot of the Buddhist teachers in the West don't associate kindness and non-harming with not eating animals. They just don't get it. So a lot of Western Buddhist centers and Dharma centers where I study still serve eggs and cheese and other animal products in which the animals are harmed terribly. So one of the board members of Dharma Voices for Animals is a wonderful monk named Tashi Nyima. And he tells the story that I just love. So he starts with a quote from the Buddha that says, having laid down the knife, scrupulous, full of mercy, trembling with compassion for all sentient beings, we refrain from taking life. And he says, I'm going to paraphrase this. I gave you the link in the handout of where to read the story in his words. But he says, one night he and another monk were walking down a street and they heard the screams and cries of a young man, and they ran to see what it was, and two men were beating up this young kid. And Tashi's friend said, come on, we have to help. And he went up to these two kids who were pummeling this third boy and said, wouldn't it be more fun to beat up two monks than this young kid? And the two boys cursed and made some horrible noises and stopped beating up the kid and went away. So they called an ambulance and the kid was taken away with the paramedics. And my friend Tashi turned to the senior monk and said, did you know that we weren't going to get beaten up? Because we took a vow of nonviolence. They're not allowed to defend themselves. Buddhist monks are not supposed to fight even to defend themselves. So he was kind of nervous. He said, did you know that we weren't going to be beaten up ourselves? And the other monks said, no, but it was our duty. When confronted with suffering, it's our duty to get in the way, to stand between those who would do harm and those who would be hurt. I love that story. And he goes on to say, as a vegan, we're getting in the way. We're standing up and saying, the cruelty that's being inflicted on these animals in my name, I don't want it done in my name. It's wrong, and I will get in the way and do what I can to stop the raising of animals for food. I want to point out the reason. I'll tell a story. When I became a vegetarian in 1985, after I edited the book Fit for Life, I moved to California the next year, in 1986, and I was so proud of my change to vegetarian diet. I was like, wow, this is a huge change. This is really big. I met people who would say to me over and over again, "You're still eating cheese? You're still eating dairy? You're still eating eggs?" I was appalled. It's like, how dare you tell me that's not enough? I made the biggest change in my life. I pissed off everyone in my family, and you're telling me it's not enough? Where do you come off telling me it's not enough? And everyone said, read Diet for a New America by John Robbins. Read this book by John Robbins called Diet for a New America. John Robbins is the son of Baskin and Robbins' founder. And he turned down this business, a multi-million-dollar career he could have had, and he turned it down on ethical reasons. But I finally read it, and overnight I became vegan, because what I learned in that book is astounding. The lives of dairy cows and the lives of the hens who lay eggs are by far the most tortured lives of any animal being raised for food. I would rather, this is disgusting and it's not really true, but I'd rather see people eating cow flesh than eating eggs and dairy. I don't want to see anyone eating flesh of any animal, but the animals raised for their eggs and for their milk have the worst lives. And if anyone values motherhood, if anyone cherishes the idea, the concept of motherhood, the bond between a mother and a child, the dairy cow story is just heartbreaking. Dairy cows are kept pregnant their entire young lives. They're artificially inseminated over and over again, so they will continue to produce milk. And the baby is taken away from the mother within 2 days of birth. It's often the same day, sometimes it's 2 days later. But the baby cries for the mother, and the mother cries for the baby, and the sound is heartbreaking. You'll never forget it if you ever hear it. They really run up and down the fence looking for each other and screaming and crying for each other. You are separating a mother from her child within days of childbirth. And it's done over and over again until the animal's milk production isn't quite profitable enough, and then the mother cow too is sold for her flesh. So hamburger meat comes from dairy cows, and veal is the male offspring of dairy cows. So the veal industry is the same as the dairy industry. When you're eating veal, it's a baby cow from a dairy cow. And if it's a female, she grows up to have the same miserable life her mother had, where she's impregnated over and over again to have babies that are taken away from her. It's really ugly and it's really sad. Now, the chicken industry, the egg industry, everyone thinks, well, eggs don't hurt anybody. Eggs come from laying hens. And even people with backyard chickens usually get those chickens from a hatchery. A hatchery is where the babies are hatched. Only the females are of value for egg-laying operation, because that's only females can lay eggs. So at a hatchery, half the chicks that are born are male and half are female. The females are put either in cages or huge, usually cages in the egg-laying thing. The females are put in cages, and they are kept in cages their whole lives, and they produce eggs under horrible conditions. The males are of no value. They're not bred for their meat. They're the wrong kind of chick to be bred for meat. So the day they're hatched, there's someone on an assembly line looking at each one. Females go this way, males go that way. The males are ground up alive and killed the day they're hatched in a giant machine, a macerating machine. It's kind of like a disposal in your sink, but an industrial size one. And the baby chicks are killed the day they hatch because they're male and of no use to the industry. Sometimes they're suffocated in plastic garbage bags. They're just thrown in a big trash bag and it's closed and they suffocate. But more often they're thrown in a big machine. It's disgusting. We're killing the baby males so that we can get the females to lay the eggs. So, on ethical grounds alone, I think anyone who is going vegan is doing the right thing. And yet, like any other movement, like any other cuisine, there are different camps. There are people who will tell you, if you're vegan, it's stupid not to be a low-fat vegan and a no-oil vegan and a no-salt vegan and a whole foods plant-based diet vegan, because that's where you get the bang for the buck in terms of health. That's probably true in terms of health. But to me, veganism is a much bigger tent than just I want to be healthy. It's not about me and it's not about my health. So I think if you're a fast food, junk food vegan, you're still doing the right thing because you're not harming those animals and you're not harming the earth. You may be killing yourself at the same rate on vegan junk food as you did on animal-based junk food, but you're doing a favor to the earth and to the animals, so you're not wrong. Being a vegan is never wrong, even if you're doing it in a way that isn't the healthiest choice for you. The Paleo diet became very popular recently. People want to go back to the way our Neanderthal ancestors ate. It's a very meat-centric diet. A brilliant woman who wrote a book called Eat Vegan on $4 a Day, decided that all these people are going paleo, they're eating meat. She wrote a book called Paleo Vegan. So now if you want to go on the paleo diet, there's a vegan way to do it. In fact, there are so many vegan books out there. When I first became a vegan, I owned every vegan cookbook that was out there. There were maybe 6 or 7 of them. My favorite was by Jennifer Raymond. It was called The Peaceful Palate. But even before that, back in the 1940s or 50s, there was a book called 7 Talents. There was a wonderful macrobiotic, simple book on how to eat vegan. It didn't use the word vegan, it was just called 10 Talents. I still have that copy, it's falling apart. There were only about 5 cookbooks that I could ever find when I first went vegan. And for the first 2 or 3 years, anytime a new vegan cookbook came out, I would buy one. There is no way now, I would have had to move to a bigger house. There's no way I could have all the vegan cookbooks that are in print now. There are hundreds of them, hundreds of them. And the good news is, and my publisher doesn't like when I say this, but I'm saying it because it's the truth, you don't even need a cookbook. If you know how to use a computer, you can veganize anything. I'm using the word veganize as a verb. It means to take a recipe that isn't vegan and make it vegan. You can veganize anything, and in our book we have dozens of recipes that we veganize, favorite things from mac and cheese to pulled pork. There's actually a fabulous recipe for pulled pork in here that's vegan. You use a can of jackfruit and you put barbecue sauce on it. And we have a recipe for the barbecue sauce, and we teach you how to buy the jackfruit. And there's something else you can do with jackfruit too, to put it in wraps. Anyway, it's fascinating that everything can be veganized. We have fabulous cake recipes. We have fabulous desserts, and honestly, there are foods I won't eat in this book because of all the kinds of vegans you can be. I lean toward the healthy ones. I like Dr. Esselstyn's book on prevent and reverse heart disease, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. My grandfather died of a heart attack at age 55. My father died of a heart attack at age 75. My uncle died of a heart attack at age 49. So I see the writing on the wall, and I believe what Dr. Esselstyn says about trying to prevent heart attacks. So I'm the kind of vegan who does the minimal oil, sugar, and salt. Doesn't mean I don't eat them, but I minimize it to the best of my ability. But any kind of veganism is good veganism. Anyway, there were recipes in here I won't eat because there were 3 co-authors. And we had a lot of discussion, that's the polite word, we had a lot of discussion while we were writing the book about what should be in the book or not. My view was, this is for people over 50, you've got to give them the healthiest recipes, you've got to do the kind that Esselstyn's recommending, or that T. Colin Campbell recommends, or that Dr. McDougall recommends, or Neil Barnard, MD, recommends. I wanted the healthiest recipes only. My very wise co-authors, however, said, this is an entry point for people. You've got to give them what's familiar. You've got to tell them you don't have to give up your mac and cheese. You don't have to give up your chocolate cake. You don't have to give up your cheesecake. You don't have to give up your pulled pork. I never even had heard of pulled pork. I know it's a big thing in some communities, but I hadn't heard of it, and now I know how to make it with jackfruit. Anyway, so there are some recipes in here I won't make. There are many that I will make, and to be honest, all 3 of us contributed recipes, and the recipes I contributed are the simplest, have the fewest ingredients, and mostly came from Jennifer Raymond, my dear friend who wrote The Peaceful Palate, my favorite cookbook. When I asked her if I could borrow some of her recipes for this book, she said, absolutely, any ones you want. You have my permission in writing. I had her sign any recipes you want, please put in your book. So I took a lot of her recipes, and I love them. They're easy, they're fast, they're delicious, they're healthy. You only need 1 pot to cook them in. You don't have to like saute here and then add that. I love her recipes, so a lot of them are in here, but my publisher wanted a separate permission for every recipe. So I had to go back to this dear, generous friend and say, I know you said I could take any recipe I want, but I need you to sign these 8 different permission slips to use your recipe. Anyway, so you will find every kind of recipe in this book. There's also raw veganism. There are people who only eat raw food, though in all honesty, the people I know who call themselves raw vegans are only raw vegans about 70 to 80% of the time. They will occasionally bake a sweet potato and eat it, or they will have brown rice or quinoa and eat it. It's not an all or nothing deal. What I love about all of these different ways to be vegan, the paleo vegans, the raw vegans, the no sugar, salt, oil vegans, the fast food, junk food vegans, what I love about it is when you're on any of these diets and you fall off the wagon, you're still a vegan. In other words, you can be paleo and then one day you decide you want to have some 21st century cheesecake, vegan. You're still a vegan. You're not compromising your ethics and you're not hurting the planet. If you're a raw vegan and you decide you really, really, really want to have lentil stew, so you have lentil stew. It's not evil. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not hurting animals, you're not hurting the planet, you're not even hurting yourself. It's a marvelous meal. When you fall off the wagon on any of these vegan sects, they're like sects, S-E-C-T-S, sects. They're like they're like sororities. You're all in the same college, but these are different sororities. You're not falling off the wagon. You feel like, oh my God, I had sugar. Hello, you will live. It's not going to kill you tomorrow. I'm usually not someone who eats a lot of sugar. If someone makes me a homemade dessert that's vegan, I will eat it and I will love it. I don't do it myself. If someone else makes it, thank you very much, that was yummy. I don't come to Hawaii very often. The first night we were here, we found a vendor selling these vegan ice pops along in Waikiki. And he had all kinds of sorbet kind of flavors and one really decadent creamy chocolate one, and he swore it was vegan, and I read the ingredients and I had it, and oh my goodness, it was like a fudgicle from when I was a kid. It was delicious. Do I make it a daily habit? No. Do I make it a weekly habit? No. Was anyone harmed with my eating it? No. We don't have to become fanatics. I speak as if I'm a fanatic because I'm fanatical about veganism, but it's really not important what kind of vegan you decide to be. What's important is this is a big tent and everyone's welcome in the big tent. Once you're in the tent, you can explore different corners of the tent and you can try the raw foods and you can try the very healthy, no fat, no sugar, no salt. You can try the junk food vegan. And I think as a transition food, it's marvelous now that you can buy vegan cheeses, you can buy vegan hot dogs, you can buy vegan hamburgers. Today I had a vegan burger made with taro. I had never had that before. I know what taro is, but I didn't know you made it into burgers. And when I was thinking about what it tasted like, you could hardly taste it. I tasted the mustard, the sprouts, the tomatoes, the avocado, and the bread. And the taro got lost. So I took a piece of taro out and tasted it, and I said, it doesn't have a very strong flavor. They didn't really flavor it very strongly, but they didn't need to. But anyway, there's a place in this big vegan tent, there's a place for everybody. And you can find your corner, you can explore, and you don't have to get stuck in one. You can experiment over and over again with different ones. In the summer, I'm probably about 65 to 70% raw. Now, Hawaii, it's always warm, so I don't know about living here. But in California, when it's warm out, I can live all day on fruit smoothies and watermelon, and I just love to be raw in the summer. And when it gets colder, I want my soups, and I want my sweet potatoes, and I want my lentils, and I want my chickpeas. So I cook more food when it's cold out. There's no right or wrong in this. It's about not harming the planet, not harming yourself. Another reason we wrote this book for people over 50 is once we get to be at a certain age, we realize that we have a legacy we're going to leave when we're no longer on the planet. And people will remember the impact we had. In the Jewish religion, they say when somebody dies, he still lives on earth in the acts of goodness he performed and in the hearts of those who cherish his memory. So people remember you, and as long as there are people alive who remember you, your spirit is still alive. In my way of thinking of it, if we're saving animals' lives every single day, and we're doing what we can to slow down this climate change that's really ravishing the planet, and we're doing everything we can to make a difference with the streams and the oceans and the rainforests and the animals who are going extinct at really record-breaking rates. If we're doing everything we can to make the place better rather than worse, we're leaving a legacy that our grandchildren won't be ashamed of. I can't imagine what our grandchildren are going to think when they're in their 60s and 70s and 80s and they think, I wonder why my grandparents didn't do anything if they knew it was this bad. If they knew we could change it, why didn't they try to change it? And it's like changing a giant cruise ship. When you change direction, you can't just turn on a dime like a sports car. It's a very slow thing, but everyone has to do it. And that's why I love the Meatless Monday paradigm. If everyone did it, it would have a much bigger impact than just if, a few people here do it, a few people there do it. And what's brilliant, when I first heard about Meatless Monday, I said, what the heck difference is one day a week gonna make? But on two counts, I was wrong. First of all, the more people who do it, the more difference it does make. Second of all, when you go meatless one day a week, you explore new recipes, and sometimes you eat it 2 days a week, because you have leftovers. And sometimes there's more than one recipe you want to try. It turns out that people who go meatless 1 day a week end up going meatless more than 1 day a week. They see that it's very interesting. It's a new cuisine. So veganism can be seen as a new cuisine, just like I'm trying Indian food for the first time, or I'm trying Thai food for the first time. It's a cuisine. Try it and experiment with it. So I kind of changed my mind about the Meatless Monday paradigm, because people who will try it even 1 day a week very often become more and more enamored of it and will do it more than 1 day a week. That it's more important to connect with people than to change their minds. When I became a new vegan, I wanted everyone to know it and I wanted everyone to do it. It's like, I can't believe I didn't know this until I was 30-something years old. Do you know what we're doing to animals? Do you know what we're doing? I was just so excited about it. I wanted everyone to be just like me. I wanted them to change. And I wanted them to read this book and make this change. And you don't change anybody's mind like that. You just look like you're a fanatic. And I became a fundamentalist vegan. I was a fundamentalist. It was like you're either on my team or you're not on my team. So I was so black and white thinking. I was so, you gotta do it and you gotta do it now. And Joanna Macy taught me it's much more important to connect with people heart to heart than it is to change their mind. And the reason this is true is you can't change anybody's mind. Nobody can change your mind. It has to come from you. And the only way anyone will listen to your message is if they feel listened to, if they feel heard, if they feel a connection. It's not that they'll change once they understand you and once you feel that connection, but there's no hope if that connection isn't there. So it's much more important to meet people as people and remember that very few of us were born and raised as vegans. We came to it slowly and we came to it in our own time, and we came to it because our minds changed. No one else changed them for us. So I love that. I love remembering that connecting with people is much more important. And as I said earlier, having something social going on in your life, even if it's a once-a-month meeting of any kind, having something to look forward to going to with other people is just as important as diet in living a long, healthy life. Social engagement is important. So I don't know if anyone knows this song. I know it's a campfire song or a Girl Scout song, but it's so relevant to our message here. It's make new friends and keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold. Does anyone know that song? Raise your hand if you've heard that song before. Okay, anyway, the lyrics are make new friends. I'm not going to make you sing it. I was thinking of having us sing it in rounds, but I thought that's a bit much. But anyway, it's a beautiful song. It's make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold. And I think it's a wonderful message for being a vegan, because you don't want to give up your non-vegan friends, and you certainly don't want them ditching you just because they think you're difficult now. It's not about them and it's not about you. So it's important to make new friends who are vegan. It's very good to connect with someone else who's on that path, or who can help you on that path, or can at least inspire you on that path. But it's important that you not lose your friends who aren't vegan, because you must remember you weren't vegan too. When you made those friends, you weren't vegan. So why would you suddenly judge or dismiss or not want to be with a friend who hasn't had the same change you had? It seems so silly. My best friends in life are not vegans. And some of my best friends in life are not vegans, but they are lifelong friends, and I adore them. And they admire me, they admit it, and when they're with me, they're pretty kind about wanting to make vegan choices, and they're the kinds of people to say, well, if you cook for me, I'd eat like this all the time. Well, I do cook for them when they're with me, but we go out to eat, and they'll order vegan because I order vegan, and I show them how to. So I think it's really important to keep our old friends, and it's good that they admire us. I have a dear friend I've known since preschool. We called it, we didn't call it preschool then, we called it nursery school. We went to a nursery school that was called Happy House, which now sounds like a rehab center, but it was really just a nursery school. We went to Happy House. So I've known him since I was about 3 or 4 years old. We grew up in the same neighborhood in New York. And it turns out last year he was having terrible chest pains, and he had angina, and he needed a stent put in. So for the first time in all these 60-something years I've known him, he wanted to know how I eat, and he wanted to know recipes, and he wanted to know cookbooks, and son of a gun, he changed his diet, and he lost quite a few pounds. And it was very exciting for me, because I never proselytized to him. I never told him he should do this and he should eat that. He found out when his life was at stake that he could save his own life. And it's fascinating to watch, and it's delightful to watch. And now suddenly I'm his mentor. It's like he calls me with questions. And he has a solar oven. Does anyone here have a solar oven? Hawaii would be a great place for them. It's a giant box with like reflectors on all the sides of the lids. And you put a pot in the middle and close the lids. And you can bake things in it, and you can steam vegetables in it. You use no power except the sun. Anyway, he loves using his solar oven. And every time he's anywhere, he takes it out and shows people, look, we have a solar oven. I can bake potatoes. Watch this. I can make a stew. Look at this. It's very exciting. So I think it's important to talk openly about your veganism and not be a closet vegan. I think it's important to tell people I've changed my diet, especially with friendships and especially with long-term relationships. You need to tell people I've made a major change and I want you to support me in it. I'm not asking you to change, but I'd love your support. And I hope you'll keep me in your circle of friends, and I hope you'll keep me involved in our relationships, because you can preempt that trend of people unfriending you. And I don't mean on Facebook. Speaking of Facebook, I don't do Facebook, but my book has a Facebook page. So that's very exciting. So the book has its own Facebook page. I don't know how that works, but I think my co-author takes care of it. But I wanted everyone to know that if you are on Facebook and you do use Facebook, you can friend this book, whatever that means. I want to see if there's anything I didn't cover that I said I was going to cover. I want to talk about a few resources that I find totally invaluable. I love them. They will inspire you every day to stay on the vegan path or to enter the vegan stream. One of them is by Dr. Michael Greger, is an MD, and he has a website called nutritionfacts.org, F-A-C-T-S, nutritionfacts.org. Every single day of the year, in your email, you will get from him one article or video about nutrition in one of the peer-reviewed journals. And it can be the Journal of Diabetes, the Journal of Heart Disease, the Journal of American Medical Association. Anywhere in the world, if something was published about nutrition and it's relevant to what we're eating, he will summarize it for you and send a very succinct, usually entertaining, but always eye-opening article. And it's the best way to educate yourself. It's fabulous, and I encourage everyone to sign up for this free email at nutritionfacts.org. I also want to recommend foodispower.org, foodispower.org. And that is a website of an organization called the Food Empowerment Project. This is a marvelous not-for-profit that connects the dots between farm workers' rights, animal rights, human rights, and the planet's health. It's the only organization I know that really looks at the human side of our food choices on all the realms. They talk about food scarcity in neighborhoods that don't have access to healthy foods. They do surveys in neighborhoods to talk about how it's easier to buy liquor than to buy fresh fruit or vegetables. It's a marvelous organization called the Food Empowerment Project. Their website is foodispower.org. Also, the Factory Farming Awareness Coalition. The Factory Farming Awareness Coalition is a marvelous organization that trains speakers to go to schools and not-for-profits and give talks. And their foot in the door is factory farming. But once they get invited to speak, they talk about animal rights, and they talk about health, and they talk about the planet and climate change. So factory farming is their foot in the door, and they talk about why it's really a myth to talk about sustainable animal agriculture. There's no such thing. Whether it's a small farm or a big farm, the dairy cow is still going to poop 150 pounds of manure every day. Whether it's a big chicken facility or a small chicken facility, the males are still killed at the hatchery the day they're hatched. There's no such thing as kind or sustainable animal agriculture on any scale. So I want to recommend that you educate yourself and learn about some of these not-for-profits whose work is just to educate people about all of these issues. Around the holidays, a lot of people get mail solicitations to buy a gift in someone's honor by giving a chicken or a goat or a cow to some family somewhere halfway around the world because that's going to make them rich or happy. I want to point out that that's not true. It's another mouth to feed for a lot of these families. They don't want to get a goat as a present because that's one more animal they have to feed. And I want to think of the name of it before I bring this up. There's a great organization called A Well-Fed World, which not only wants to feed hungry people and do what's right by people around the world, but they also care about animals, so they will never recommend giving an animal. They will help you help communities around the world dig wells to get fresh water. They'll help communities around the world send the children to school so they can be educated. They'll help people learn how to grow more sustainable foods for their communities. A wellfedworld.org is a great alternative to these organizations that are telling you, send a cow to a poor community. There are so many ways to make a difference in this world. To me, veganism is one of the few ways that you get a huge bang for the small buck. You change the way you're eating and you have an impact. We don't have to wait for laws to change. We don't have to wait for our elected officials to tell us how to save the planet and how to stop the warming of the oceans and the warming of the ice caps. We don't have to wait for any of the scientific experts to tell the elected officials that we need to do something. We, with the power of our forks and knives, have a huge influence on the way our country works. I have a bumper sticker on my car that says, "Peace begins in the kitchen." Peace begins in the kitchen, kindness begins in the kitchen, and climate change begins in the kitchen. And it's funny, I think we're coming to a tipping point. When I became a vegan, no one knew what vegan meant. No one knew how to pronounce it. People thought I was from the planet Vega. It's really strange how we're coming to a tipping point where people know what vegan is. Bill Clinton has become a vegan. Al Gore has become a vegan. A lot of celebrities have become vegans. A lot of athletes have become vegans. The word is out there and it's kind of trendy. But it's not the kind of trend that comes and goes. It's the trend that people realize it's something we can do for our legacy, for our health, for our fellow earthlings, and for everybody else. So I want to encourage everyone to take one step in the direction of veganism, even if it's one day a week or just on weekends, or if it's one meal a day, but it's every day. Breakfast is a very easy meal to veganize. Breakfast is cereal and milk. Well, milk no longer means from cows. Milk means from soybeans or from rice or from hemp or from, what am I forgetting, almonds. There are all kinds of alternatives. When I first became a vegan, you could not buy an alternative except for a horrible powder that you mixed with water, and it was a thin soy milk. It was disgusting. But I would blanch almonds and then pop the skin off and then put them in a blender with water and then strain it through cheesecloth, and I would make my own almond milk. And I thought that was so clever. I could have cereal with milk, and I made the milk myself. Now you can buy soy milk, almond milk, hemp milk, rice milk, other milks. Anyway, it's an exciting time to go vegan because people know what it is and there are more choices than there ever were. So I encourage everybody to take one more step in that direction. Whether you're already a vegan, try one of the other corners of the vegan tent. And if you're not already a vegan, try it at least 1 or 2 days a week or one or two meals a day. I just want to encourage everyone to do that. Can I just see a show of hands if anyone is willing to eat one more vegan meal tomorrow than they did today? Is anyone willing to do that? That's marvelous. That's marvelous. Thank you. A lot of hands went up. That's so exciting. If you make that commitment to yourself, it's just a gift you're giving to the planet. And most people who talk about going vegan, and our book goes into this a lot, all the health benefits, all the scientific stuff, the nutrition stuff, there are experts in this room who could talk about this forever. We have a lot of doctors in this organization who know the medical, nutritional side of it. I'm trying to encourage you to think of it as a bigger tent than that. It will help you get healthy. It will help you make the right choices for longevity. But more important, it will help you leave a legacy of kindness and a legacy of caring. The worst thing in the world is to not care. So I thank you for your kind attention, and I'm happy to take questions now if anybody has any. Thank you. My thought about free-range chickens is that's a marketing ploy, and those animals aren't any happier because technically, to meet the letter of the law, a free-range chicken has a door in the shed. There will be thousands and thousands of chickens crammed together in a huge shed, and there will be one little door that they theoretically could go out of if they could climb over each other and get to the door.
So what if you actually know that they are free-range?
If you know they are free-range, you must remember they probably came from a hatchery. And so the price they paid to be a free-range chicken was their brothers were killed the day they were hatched. So I think ethically it's really hard, unless they're rescued. I know a lot of people who go to rescue places like Farm Sanctuary or Animal Place. They're a rescue facility, they're rescue, what do you call those? Sanctuaries. They're animal sanctuaries that take animals who survive hurricanes or, who are abandoned. If they come from a rescue situation and they happen to be free range, okay, they still started in a hatchery, but you're saving their lives. But the idea of buying chickens so that you will have a free range chicken in your backyard or from a free range facility, I don't think it's kind to the animals. Thank you for the question, though. Yes?
What is it with the male chicken meat that they can't use it?
Each variety of chicken is bred specifically for the same purpose, so if you're... Repeat the question. What is wrong with the flesh of the male chickens that they can't eat it? The male chicks in a laying facility, those animals were bred to be layers, and only the layers, they're not bred for their meat. So the animals that are bred for their meat have huge breasts, and they can't walk because the breasts are so large, and they topple over, and it's not natural. That's just a different variety of chicken, and nobody would eat the male chickens if they raised them, and nobody's going to feed them and keep them alive because their profit is in the eggs. So it's just the wrong kind of variety. Animal agriculture is about profit. Whenever you hear somebody, I don't remember who said this, but I read recently a marvelous quotation. Whenever you hear someone say, look, we have to be realistic, somebody is going to be abused. There is always oppression when the words, look, we have to be realistic. When someone says you have to be realistic, the world's not going to go vegan. Whoever said that has something to gain by not going vegan, whether it's just the comfort of staying in their own comfort zone, or whether it's, something about not wanting to give up what's familiar because they grew up with it and their mother does it and their uncle raises cows. Whatever it is, that's a phrase that's kind of scary to me. The other thing I heard recently, you know how when you sign your email, you can have a signature line where every time you sign, the same thing comes up so everyone sees it? Somebody I know has a great signature line, and it's a quotation, but I don't remember who said it. It says, if you want to know how you would have felt, if you lived during times of human slavery, and you want to know how you would have been in the age of slavery, don't ask yourself how you feel about slavery today. Ask yourself where you stand on animal rights today. Because today's issue is more about, anyway, you get it. I don't have to finish it. Yes, sir. I have a magnet on my refrigerator that says, try organic, or as your grandmother said, food. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Patti Breitman, for this truly inspiring and enlightening presentation that you just gave to us. Really appreciate it. Before we go on, I forgot to mention earlier that we have a special couple visiting us tonight. If you'd like to stand up, Steve and Cindy Hayter from the Fort Worth Vegetarian Society. They're the president and vice president, and they've kept this going now for about 23 years. Mahalo to all of you for coming, and have a safe return home. Good night, everyone.
This program is brought to you by the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing with the community the many benefits of a vegetarian diet. Free monthly meetings include vegetarian experts found locally and on the mainland, quick and easy cooking demonstrations, and helpful and delicious food samples. Members enjoy an informative quarterly newsletter, social activities, and discounts at many vegetarian-friendly restaurants and health food stores. For an application, call 944-8344. That's 944-8344. Or visit our website at www.vsh.org. vsh.org.